Hello everyone, and welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Workplace class. We are in Chapter 2, which is entitled Self-Control, the Essential Ingredient to a Successful Workplace. Self-control is the essential ingredient to a successful workplace. Now, in the part of the chapter, the beginning, what we've went on so far, we learned that self-control is controlling how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. And we've also talked about what a positive and a negative thought is. And on page 11 of the Workplace Manual, we go into the basic steps of morality. And this is how we decide if it's a positive or a negative choice. If it's a negative choice, it will hurt yourself, others, the environment, possessions, and property. But if it's a positive choice, it won't cause harm to yourself, others, or the environment. And this is what we want to keep in mind as we are aware of our thoughts, are aware of our feelings, and how they affect our actions. We also went on to talk about knowing what your triggers are. And I want to go to page 33 before we jump back to where we were last week. Page 32. It says trigger. A trigger is an incident that stirs up the emotion of anger, frustration, or resentment. One of the first steps in practicing self-control is to recognize what your triggers are. If you go to the bottom paragraph, the second to last paragraph on page 32, it says, once you have identified your triggers, the next step is to honestly determine the thoughts they invoke. So you see, in order to control yourself, you have to know what triggers it and then what thoughts come from it. And we also talk about how we handle our emotions. Now, there can be a misconception that in order to go through life, I have to be positive all the time. And the Peaceful Solution does express positivity is important. But the line that seems to be blurred at times is that you can feel sad, you can be angry. In the self-control book, we talk about how that's a secondary emotion. So you'll probably be frustrated, and because you let that fester, it can become anger. It's okay to feel sad, worried, upset. It's okay to feel positive and negative emotions. What's not okay is to allow those emotions to control you. You can feel those emotions, but you have to control those emotions. Also, we talked about how we can only control ourselves. In a society where we can have a list of, you can't do this, you can't do that, knowing we can control ourselves is a very important thing. It can show you that I have power in a situation where sometimes I don't feel that I have power. And also last week we talked about in a society where it's problematic to actually ask for help. Don't stuff it in. You know, because in society, it's seeming that whenever you're asking for help, you're seeking attention. There was one time that I was teaching a young girl in CPS class, and she said, the reason I keep to myself is because in my culture, it is seen weak to share your business with your family business with other people. And as we go on, we talk about in cultures how that is sometimes, that's their belief system. But the Peaceful Solution teaches that it is okay to seek help. And as we go in our workplace, there's going to be times where we're going to need that guidance. We're going to need that help. So it is always okay to ask for clear instructions. Has anyone ever downloaded an app on their phone and you see that thing that says terms and conditions? Raise your hand if you ever read the terms and conditions. No, we normally press agree and hope for the best. Hope nothing gets hacked, hope nothing occurs. But as you go into your workplace, you have to be aware of what those terms and conditions are. You have to know what is required of you. And this also helps you to be in control of yourself. Okay, what are some situations that could come up? How am I going to control myself? On the bottom of page 42, the second to last paragraph, it says the overall atmosphere of your workplace environment can also influence the choices and the people that you make. The choices, yes, read that again. The overall atmosphere of your workplace environment can affect the influences of also influence the choices, people make. And this is why we want to make a very peaceful environment. We don't know what goes on outside of our workplace in people's lives. What we can do is always check up on other people. Always check up and be aware and be respectful and thoughtful of others. And whenever we see violence, what do? We report it. We make it known. When we are disrespected, we go and we make our voice heard in a very positive way. There was a question on page 41 that asked, why do some people go, let's go back to it real quick. Why do some people become violent and angry in a workplace while others commit murder? Think about the triggers. The second is the thoughts you invoke. Has anyone heard of the phrase premeditated murder? Have you ever thought of what it means to premeditate something? You thought about it, you planned, and you continue to plan. You pondered it. So instead of premeditating murder, why don't we premeditate a calm environment? And this is what the Peaceful Solution talks about, setting your mind in advance. If you want a peaceful environment, then you have to have peace within yourself. We're going to start on page 43. And it says, use self-control to follow these guidelines for maintaining a healthy workplace environment. Number 1, with a sincere smile, greet one another warmly at the start or each and every workday shift. This includes making proper eye contact. And in the respect book on page 92, we cover some respectful ways. The following is a list of behaviors considered respectful. Number 1 is to speak in a calm tone of voice and be aware of your facial expressions. Number 2, make requests of others rather than demands. Number 3, say excuse me if someone is in your way. Number 4, give the appropriate greeting. And number 5, be thoughtful of others. And these really play a big impact into how our interactions are going to be better with others. And I've been really thinking about this lately because I am a person that when I talk to you, I try to pay attention. Like how you express yourself is normally how I gauge kind of what mood you're in. But there's a lot of people who I've come in contact with, they're not like me. They'll look at you, they'll be talking to you, looking everywhere else. You could be talking to them, they're looking in a different place. They don't express, like they're not really an expressive person. And to me, that can be a little caught off guard, like, am I offending this person? Does this person actually like me? Like, I start questioning every interaction. But someone has continued to point out to me that everyone is different. Stop taking things personally. If you feel like you did something wrong, you can address that. But everyone kind of communicates in a different way. They express themselves in a different way. And this is why acknowledging someone, showing that they're appreciated, you can verbally express, okay, I see you, and I appreciate your work. I appreciate the environment, the peaceful environment that you're helping to create. Number 2, back on page 43. Always use polite and courteous words, such as please and thank you. This is part of a basic work ethic and reflects a caring attitude. We've all heard the saying, talk is cheap, or actions speak louder than words. So instead of saying, I truly care for you, I really like that we get to work together, you could say that, but let your actions show that too. Let it by even the simplest thing. Someone hands you a paperclip off the floor. Say thank you. It's these things that seem so small that make someone realize I'm seen, I'm appreciated, I can do something, and someone can acknowledge me. And I want to look on page 12. And rehearse ourselves of what respect means. Because when you care for someone, it means that you're showing respect to them. So respectful is to value others as important as yourself and to allow that to show forth your actions and attitude. And notice that first part, value others as important as yourself. The way that you treat others is normally a reflect of how you think about yourself. So if you are going to treat others with that respect, speak those kind words, you first need to start with yourself and do those same things. This person once said that every time they looked at themselves as a broken person. And they finally said, because you keep looking at yourself as a broken person, it's harder for you to communicate with others. It's harder for you to see things in a brighter way. And so what they continue to tell themselves is, we're going to continue to forgive the things we couldn't change. We're going to accept what's going on in life, and we're no longer going to be broken. So every time this individual feels this way, they look at themselves and say, I'm not broken. And what that does is say, everything that I've went on in the past has built me to where I am. So who am I going to become now with what I know? And when you have that mindset going in your workplace that I'm not broken, but I'm going to learn, you can still seek help. But once you have a positive version of yourself, that's going to reflect in your interactions with other people. That's going to reflect in the positions that you might get. I was on Instagram earlier this morning, and I seen a picture of a girl. I'm not sure what store she was in, but she said, I'm tired of working. So it was a picture of her laying in the, where the pillows normally are? She was just laying there. And this person commented underneath and said, we have built a society where we want to reach far in life, but we don't want to work for it. And that really, I was thinking of class tonight because, in a generation where we want the best, we want the latest brands, we want this, we want that, until you have to pay for it, you don't understand how much electricity, you don't understand how important it is to turn that air conditioner off before you leave your house, and then turn it back on when you come back home, because that's how much prices are rising these days. So if you have that caring attitude towards your possessions, you're going to take that caring attitude towards your workplace as well. You're going to take care of everything because you see that value. Point number 3, be responsible with your choices and earning a peaceful reputation. And this responsibility comes with self-control, with showing care, with being on time. And if you're not going to be on time for your work, letting your boss know. But also think, why is it that today I'm not going to be on time? Am I not prioritizing properly? Am I not going to bed when I'm supposed to? What is causing me to not be able to fulfill my obligations? Point number 4, show a genuine, earnest desire to do your best with whatever you're assigned to do, no matter the opposition you might encounter. So as we encourage our teachers to have a positive outlook, we also want to encourage the employees to have a positive outlook as well, because you can go to work and know that there's going to be things that are not going to go right. But you can always plan to do your best. And sometimes that's just by having yourself put together. You have your mindset, I know when I go to work, I need to do this. Things are going to come up, but I'm going to keep myself calm. Because there's always, I'm not sure in your work areas, but there's always that one person who always says that one thing every single day. Or always, can you do this? Wait, no, I need you to do this. Maybe do that. And you can be like, I just wanted to know one thing I needed to do. But you're aware of that. You're aware that this is what this person does. So you can keep yourself calm. Responsibility for how you react to other people. Number 5, maintain integrity and follow through with what you say you're going to do. Now I want to look at that word integrity. In the character book on page 18, we talk about what that word integrity means. And it's the end result of internalizing positive character traits that can be clearly seen in your actions and attitudes. So it's when you make being respectful, being responsible, when you make that behavior a part of you. I was recently watching a show, and the show was about people who invest in businesses. And there was a lady, and a man came to invest in her business. And he said, I know you have a pastry business, but it's not making great margins, so I want to invest in your popcorn business. Instead of just being at the fair, we want to actually create a store. And so the lady was like, okay. So he said, I'm going to find a place and you find a place, and we'll see which one works better for the business. So he picked a place and she was like, I don't like it. And he picked a place and she's like, I don't like it. And she's like, well, that's okay. I didn't figure you would, because I actually picked this place for my pastry business. And he's like, do you remember when we made the deal? The deal was that I was going to invest in your popcorn business. So on the way back to their current office, he said, do I have to worry about this with you whenever we get deeper into business? And she said, no, I'm a person of integrity. And the fact she said integrity like perked my interest. She's like, you don't have to worry about this. I have many employees. But then later on, when they were doing rebranding and repackaging, she went behind his back and tried to buy the website that he created for her business. And she said, I thought I could trust you. And she's like, I'm a person of integrity. And I thought, we use words so much, but you weren't respectful. You weren't honest. You lied to him. And another thing she said that really caught my attention, she said, if I make money today, he's going to go on to be a billionaire, so why should I care? And I thought, this is where it affects the workplace. This is why your business is going downhill. Because you as a person has not realized the importance of being honest. I mean, think about businesses whenever you don't pay the vendors. Then you start to get a bad reputation, and you could get a black mark, and then they no longer want to have an account with you anymore. This is why our part in a business in our workplace is so important, because you're not just affecting your reputation, you're affecting the business's reputation. And when it's a corporation, that can affect millions of lives. And this is why we have to be careful about the words that we say. If we're going to be a person of integrity, our actions need to show it. And this is why I really hope that as we go through this book, we go back and revisit pages 12 and 13, which talks about the positive character traits. And page 14 shows you how to obtain these positive character traits. Point number 6, back on page 43. It says, be attentive to the safety and needs of yourself and others and possessions. Now, depending on what environment, that we're teaching this workplace in, there might be different safety precautions that we might make our employees aware of. Excuse me. So when we focus on the safety, back to the terms and conditions, make sure that everyone understands why, you're doing this. If you're using a bandsaw, you might want to, wear some protective gear. If you're going outside, you might want to let everyone else know that you're going outside. These are precautions that are meant for our safety. Not so we can think that people are just trying to keep a tag on us, but because you are part of a business, you take care of each other, you help each other. It's part of being that team that we're going to see in point number 7. Value input and suggestions from others in order to build your teamwork. We heard in previous classes how we want to be our own person, and suggestions sometimes can seem like, oh my word, is there any other person you worry about? Like, you have someone else to worry about, and that would be you. But look at yourself. You're not going to be a better person. You're not going to be able to scale up in life and get other jobs if we're not able to be humble and change little things about ourselves. If you think about it, you're interdependent. You wake up and you wash your face, right? You're probably using a facial product because you trust the brand that says this is going to help you not have acne anymore. You're depending on somebody to change the way that you look. You eat foods because you're trusting that what the marketing said, that it's going to help your body. So in our workplace, why is it that we're so upset and we do not value the input that our people are trying to give us in order to help us be the best people we can be to succeed? The bottom of page 43, it says, when self-control is used to consistently practice these 7 guidelines, there would be no room for violence in a workplace. Yes, problems arise, and this is a normal part of life. Everyone has setbacks. Everyone has bad days. We all have our bad moments. When educated in moral excellence, using the Peaceful Solution Character Education Workplace Manual, everyone has the opportunity to practice self-control and make a peaceful day for all by making right choices. Now, everyone has bad moments, correct? Yes? I want to ask you, how many of you have heard of on the news, of someone who's tried to jump off a bridge? Anyone? Okay, so that means we need to destroy all bridges, right? We need to destroy every bridge. Because if we destroy the bridges, then no one's going to jump off anymore, correct? No, but this is sometimes our mindset. We don't accept our actions. We don't accept that we're the ones that need to change. Whether the bridge is there or not, people are going to find a different use for it. So what the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program says, no matter what is around you, no matter if you are having a bad day, you are in control of you. You can control how you act, how you behave, the relationships you're building, and the relationships you are breaking, all based on the thoughts that you are pondering. What are you allowing to control you? How do you see yourself? How do you see your work environment? You know, as we teach this to the teachers, there might be one thing that you will find, that people want to find the best people to work at their place. You know, you might have some employers say, I can't find the right people. Because in your work environment, you want to create an environment where you can create and help mold the best people for the job. I can tell you at the place that I work at, I was not a fit person. Like, me and measuring tapes are just not, you can give me a ruler and I can still draw a slanted line. That's just how well I am. But at my job, I am required to use measuring tapes. That's literally what I do. I have to use measuring tapes in order to do my job. So what I did one time is I asked, the person who helped me a lot of questions. And like for me, I take things and I'm just like, I'm really sorry that I'm asking you all these questions. But then I realized that if I took the time to have them show me what to do, and I paid attention, I did just ask, hey, can you do this? Because I really don't want to do it. I will admit a few times I did do that because I did not want to cut this cushion. It was just really... But then I realized that there's going to be a time where I'm going to have to do this on my own because everyone has their own, their designated areas. So if I want to grow, I need to take the time to focus on what is required of me. And because of that, yes, things have grown and bigger, and it's like, you want me to do that too? But I realized that because I changed my mindset concerning what I was doing, it's now something I enjoy to do. Not saying that there's times where it's just like, this is just overwhelming. I recognize that it's overwhelming and say, how can I work through this? And that's where that self-control comes in. You are aware that this is not a pleasant thing that you want to do. But this is what you're going to do because that's the option you're giving yourself. When you're thinking about, as you go through the day, think about the STOP acronym. You're stopping and you're thinking, what options am I giving myself to proceed to do my job? Let's go ahead and turn to page 28. We're going to turn to page 28, and we're going to read procedure 10. It says, choose students to read and discuss a section entitled Respect Requires Self-Control, found on page 44. Emphasize that respect is a result of self-control. When we feel we have been disrespected, we do not have to respond with disrespect. Allow students to read this scenario and answer the questions on page 44 through 45. So let's go ahead and turn to page 44. Page 44. And it's entitled, Respect Requires Self-Control. Now, why does it take self-control to have respect? This is a question that you can have as a discussion with the teachers that we will be teaching because you want to know what they've understood so far. Self-control is an important ingredient to a workplace, but how does it tie in with respect? Because with respect, you still have to be in control of yourself. You're caring for yourself and someone else, which means you're aware of the thoughts and the feelings. Your actions are ones that you want to show that you're caring to others, which means you have to be careful of what you're pondering, what intent that you have concerning the interaction with the other person. And in the respect book to chapter 5, it talks about how to respond to disrespect. The first paragraph, it says, although an entire chapter will be dedicated to the character trait of respect, it is also important to mention in this chapter on self-control, it takes self-control to be a respectful person, to show care and concern not only to individuals, but to also the belongings of coworkers at your company. A respectful attitude requires that we stop and think about the correct way we respond to both those in authority and our peers, as well as the correct way to treat the possessions of others. And you can reference page 11, where we talk about the 3 steps to morality. So notice that in our workplace, we're not just considering how people are treating us, but we're also really considering how we're responding to other people. We talk about in the self-control book how only our communication is only based on 7% of the words that we say. It's our body language, it's our facial expressions that really make an impact on people. And that's not to say we're not careful about the words that we say, but you can say the most respectful thing, but by how you say it, someone can get the total impression. And you're like, are you sure you're okay with like what we disagreed on? Because they can say, I agree perfectly. And then they're walking out and you're just like, yeah, we're going to have another meeting about this because you clearly don't agree. So, and this is also where you want to make the platform to suggest things. Remember, you're not demanding, you can suggest. You can suggest things, but do it in a very respectful way. Respect is an integral part of the work environment. Whether you work in a restaurant, school, hospital, military, or law enforcement, just to name a few, it takes everyone respecting each other for there to be positive communication and interaction. And that word integral means vital. You cannot have an effective workplace if you're not carefully listening to what another person is saying. When it comes to interaction, we always think about listening and speaking. But what it requires you to do is, there are times where we say, how do you show that you're listening? You show that you're listening because you're paying attention. And an important thing that I'm trying to practice, that I encourage everyone else to, is whenever someone is speaking, and you are paying attention, you have a thought that pops in your head, and then they are now just talking, and their lips are moving, but you're just like, can you stop talking? Because I really want to tell you this. Use that self-control and still pay attention to what they're saying. And then once they're done, you can actually say what you would like to say. And this shows that you are, that you care for that other person. We want to show that we care through others by our actions, because when our actions show that, then we can actually start to make a workplace that everyone wants to enjoy. Remember, it's a workplace, which means we work on ourselves as individuals, and if each individual is working on themselves, then together you'll make a team that is respectful, and your workplace will probably be one of the best workplaces ever. So this, I'm going to turn it over to the next teacher.
Hello, everyone. Please give Tori another hand. She did great. She's an amazing teacher. I really enjoy working with her. We bounce ideas off of each other. And that is the respect that the Peaceful Solution wants to teach to everyone. When we have respect for our coworkers, it's going to show. It's going to show forth, like she was saying, not just in our words, but the whole demeanor that we carry in our workplace. It's going to be obvious whether we care for one another or we don't. It says, like she was saying, respect is an integral part of the work environment. And someone might not think, because she read in the previous page, she says, point 1 was, with a sincere smile, greet one another warmly at the start of each day. And it says this includes making proper eye contact. A lot of people don't realize, I think sometimes we don't realize how important that eye contact is. because our sincerity and our respect will show when we, face one another and say, great day to you, you know. So we need to be mindful of these things. I know sometimes we get busy and we're trying to do things, and we might forget that that part is a very important part. It sets the tone for your whole day. It really does. So she's saying, think of what a typical day at work would be like if people did not demonstrate common courtesy, or they showed no regard for the rules and the policies that keep them safe. There was a video that I hope to show you next week, but following rules and policies, sometimes we forget that they're there to keep us safe, and that keeping proper conduct, conducting ourselves, following the rules and the policies, shows that respect. It shows that respect to our company, to our supervisors, to the people who trained us. And that is why it is important that we can make suggestions. The Peaceful Solution says, yes, respectfully, you can always make a suggestion. You can always step into your boss's office and say, can I make a suggestion? When things are done respectfully, everything is possible. And that's one thing we really need to remind ourselves of. It says the likelihood is that if people did not demonstrate common courtesy or showed no regard for the rules or the policies that keep them safe, then the likelihood is that the environment would quickly deteriorate. People would consistently be rude and inappropriate, and the guidelines dictating proper behavior would be ignored. Working in such an environment would be stressful, demoralizing, and possibly dangerous as well. I really would like to share one scenario. We trained a school in Laredo. The students were being taught the building moral excellence, and the faculty and staff were being taught out of the moral excellence in the workplace. So we were covering the topic of communication. So I was teaching, and there were approximately 120 teachers. And so the first session of the day was with the whole faculty and staff. The second part was with the department chairs of each department. So it was a much smaller group. And I noticed one thing, that as I was teaching the first part, there was a gentleman, and I said, I don't remember the exact thing that I was covering, but he looked very upset. And I thought, I wonder what I said, because it looked like he was reacting to something I said. So then we finished the session. They had a break, and then he was one of the department chairs, so he was in my second session. And I could tell he was bothered by something. And so I am really glad that he asked. So what occurred, he waited till the training was over, but the whole time he looked upset. And so he said, could I ask you a question? And I said, yes, of course. And his director, she was there, and she says, I don't know why there was a need for you to know about that incident. I had no clue what he was talking about. And I said, I'm sorry, sir, an incident? And then he looks at his director and says, because you must have told her. And she's looking at him like, I don't know what you're talking about. Says, well, that situation with Miss So-and-so last week. And she just closes her eyes like that. She says, I didn't say anything. And I said, I really don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry. He says, well, that scenario that you covered when you were. And I laughed and I said, sorry, I mean no disrespect. I said, that scenario was from when I was teaching in a high school 7 years ago. But he really thought I was talking about his situation because of the way, and I'm mentioning this because sometimes that can occur. Someone can say something, and we might think, oh, did she say that because of what I did last week? And believe it or not, having respectful thoughts is very important. Because if you truly respect your supervisor or your coworkers, and you hear a comment, and you think it might be about you, it still wouldn't trigger for you to be angry. You know, it would trigger, if you have respect for your coworkers and for your supervisor, it would trigger wanting to know, like, oh, I wonder if I messed up. Because I really like to know if I messed up, because I like to fix it. Those are the respectful thoughts that come to someone when you have that in your workplace, right? And there's another situation that I made a comment in that same training, and I said, you know, sometimes we think, and I don't think we do it consciously, but we think, I will only respect those I like. And sometimes we don't realize that if we have some differences with somebody, that disrespect shows. And we're not always aware of it. I think we're not always mindful of it, you know, but it really does. It really comes through, you know, for example, when it's saying, why do you think the peaceful solution says, make that eye contact? Because you're acknowledging that person. I'm acknowledging you. Great day to you. It's great to see you. You need to do that. And not liking somebody because you might have differences, because I mean, it will occur. That doesn't mean that you don't respect the person. And so they shouldn't be synonymous. It's like, well, I like you, I respect you. No, I'm going to respect everyone because everyone has a gift. And I know sometimes when we don't like someone, it's very easy to see flaws and not always see, you know, talents. But if we train our mind to think differently, and I think part of the thing is that we're all trained, when we're training in this program, we need to put ourselves as supervisors, even if we're not at this time, but we need to put ourselves in the shoes of those who guide us. And I really emphasize this because when I was watching that video that I really hope I can share with you, this man was training another officer. Another person, I know we don't think a lot of the times that in our workplace it's a life or death situation. We normally don't think of it that way. But when we don't have that respect for one another, it really can come to that point where because we don't have the proper care, concern, and respect for those we work with, someone could get hurt. So in our minds, we should always think proper, like I might have differences with this person, but I care for this person. I would never want to see this person hurt, and that's the respect that needs to show. And because believe it or not, even when you're very upset, if the respect for that person is there, you'll be better able to keep yourself in control. And remember, we can only keep ourselves in control. We have no way of controlling anyone else. So it says, our work environments consist of at least several people with different characters, personalities, and customs. They work together to accomplish a goal. And I think that's another thing that should always be in the forefront of our minds. We're here to provide a service, whatever it is that your company does, and that's everybody's goal in that office that you work, or in that place that you work at. That's the goal. So then there should be no animosity because we're all working towards the same goal. And you need to, when we're teaching this program to teachers, that's one of the things that you really need to emphasize to all teachers. When we're teaching this program, that is one of the key points. Because see, society really promote competition. They really promote people competing one against the other. Okay? But when you work for a company, you need to do your job, whatever your job is, to the best of your ability. And if someone has, you know, they do it better than you, that's great. Someone's doing it. It's getting done, and your company, your workplace, can see the benefits of that talent being performed. So it should never be in our minds about competition. That shouldn't be. I know, and when we're training teachers, that's one thing we want to really emphasize. We're not promoting at all competition one against another. You know, the only person we compete is against ourselves, saying, I want to be better today than I was yesterday. I want to make better choices today than I did yesterday. Okay, so that's one key point that I really would like to encourage you all make notes that when you're teaching this, that's one key point you really want to bring out. So our work environments consist of at least several people, and inevitably, someone will say or do something that others could perceive as rude or disrespectful. This could be easy to occur due to cultural differences. And like Tori was saying, a lot of us, we have, our ethnic background or our environment where we grew up, and there are cultural differences, and the respect for one another, then that won't matter. So if someone tells you, I had a supervisor, and he would toss things. He'd walk by and like, oh, here's your, he'd toss the schedules or whatever he was passing around, he'd just toss it. Me, personally, I don't like it. I consider it rude and disrespectful, right? That's me. So one day, I was like, I had worked with him already like about a week. And I said, sir, could I talk to you? He says, sure. And I said, I personally, I don't like to toss things, and I don't like things tossed to me. I said, I consider it rude. He goes, oh, I'm so sorry, like I didn't mean to. Because people, really, that's really what it is. That people, most of the time, they don't mean any disrespect or to be rude. They have habits. They have, things so he said, I'm really, really sorry. He goes, I didn't mean to. And I said, oh, no, that's okay. I just wanted to let you know that. And so, even after that, like once in a while, he would still like forget, and and then he would get it again. Oh, I'm very sorry, ma'am, and he'd put it back. So these are things that, if you consider something rude and disrespectful, you can voice that in a respectful way. So when you're voicing your concern or when you're voicing your opinion, there's nothing wrong with that as long as we're being respectful. And that's truly, truly the bottom line, anywhere, anytime. It says, you can stop and think of the best way to handle the situation to arrive at a peaceful solution while maintaining your self-respect and your positive moral character. Don't let out of control behavior, it could be someone else's out of control behavior, even seemingly inappropriate behavior, to stir up negative feelings in you. Now, do you know how many people don't go to work sometimes and they say, well, I'm sick. And there's no doubt that they're sick, but it's stress. It's stress that physically makes one ill, okay? Now, it's not that they're not physically sick, but it acts. When your workplace is, and I don't mean stressful, can mean different things. Amount of work, it's very busy. That could cause stress, But when the relationships in a workplace, when they're not respectful, the stress that it causes, mental and physical, is very damaging. It's very damaging to each worker. It's damaging to supervisors. Okay, so here I want everyone to start, like I said earlier, we need to put ourselves in both, in the shoes of the workers, in the shoes of the supervisors. As a worker right now, when my supervisor gives me an instruction, I might not understand it at the moment. I might not understand why it has to be done that way, but my job is get it done, right? And if I have questions, I can ask later, But in the moment, you have to, follow your instructions. And like I said, on that video, there was so many points that I wanted to touch on that video that I really, really hope that I can share with you. But as, I see myself, because I've been on both, right? I've been a department chair over 100, a teacher trainer over 120 teachers, a department chair over 6 teachers, But I've also been one of the teachers, and I've had a supervisor, a department chair over me. So I can often switch my roles and think as a supervisor and say, I can understand why my supervisor needs me to do it that way. I can really, I can understand. I also know that supervisors have enormous responsibilities laid on their shoulders. And if as workers, we do not respect our workplace, we don't respect our coworkers, that just adds to a supervisor's stress. And the responsibility is huge. And I know sometimes, like I said, we might not understand everything that goes on behind the scenes, so it can be difficult for us to truly understand what me having a bad attitude can do to the workplace, right? So we need to be mindful of these things. Like I said, we need to be able to switch roles. If we're supervisors, we need to remember when we were the workers, when somebody was over us. So these things are things that at times we might not really be thoughtful of, but we need to. It says, despite the curveballs and the pitfalls that we all face, with self-control, you can treat others respectfully, even if you're annoyed or frustrated. Read the following scenario and answer the questions that follow. So here, you will learn your audience, people like to read, and you'll ask them to share with that. It says, Detective North was 10 years on the force when a middle-aged man named Miller, prominent in his community, was arrested for pedophilia, endangering a child, and kidnapping. Detective North, having a daughter around the same age as the victim, could feel the full weight of hurt and disgust that the parents of those victimized children were suffering. During interrogation of the suspect, Detective North became very frustrated. Miller had already admitted to taking a child, but he refused to divulge where the little girl was now. Learning the whereabouts of the victim was Detective's only goal at that moment. Detective North became increasingly angry. Finally, he rose from his seat with such force that the chair that he was sitting on flipped backwards and clattered to the floor. Reaching across the table, the detective grabbed Miller by the collar of his suit jacket and pulled him out of his seat. Shaking him violently, he screamed, "Tell me where she is, or I will rearrange your face." Before Miller could respond, Detective North slammed the man's head down on the table, causing blood to stream from his nose. Detective Ramsey stepped over, pulled Detective North away from Miller before Detective North could strike him a second time. Although the suspect finally divulged the whereabouts of his victim, North was suspended from duty, and a formal review of his actions were brought forth by Internal Affairs. So that's another thing with us humans. Sometimes, right, when we're very upset at somebody because they did something, like here, he confessed, So it was natural that people around him were disgusted, and that were angry. And just like our previous teacher said, Tori said, our emotions are not the problem. Being angry, it's telling us that something was done or said that we don't agree with. That's bothersome to us, okay? So the emotion itself, there's nothing wrong with it. But if we allow that emotion to control us, then that's where the problems begin. Okay, so we're going to do an analysis. The Peaceful Solutions asking us to ask some questions. So did Detective North practice self-control while interrogating the suspect? No, right? I mean, if he had not been pulled over, he would have probably slammed his head another time, right? Says he allowed his emotions. He allowed his emotions to act for him, okay, and he was not practicing self-control. Now, key point here. We cannot say that if somebody does something wrong, then violence is okay. Then it's acceptable because, well, he deserved it. No, the Peaceful Solution says violence is never the answer. Never. And so we go back and say, we can understand the disgust, and even the hurt that he probably felt, empathizing with the parents of that child. But we cannot allow those emotions to dictate to us how to behave. Respect should always be in the forefront of our mind. Is it difficult? Of course. We're seeing an extreme situation here. But he's a police officer, he's a detective. So wouldn't you think, out of all the people, he would be practicing self-control? Because if someone else had bashed somebody else's head on the table, that other person would have been arrested. That's assault. Dwight Eisenhower said, banging somebody on the head is not leadership. That's assault. And he kind of said it like in a way to be a little humorous, but that's true. It's assault no matter who does it. Okay, so violence is never the answer, and we need to remind ourselves of that. And remember also, to me, it's really key, and I think it's key to me because that's something very personal. When I came to the peaceful solution, if you would have asked me if I was aggressive, I would have told you, of course not, because I've never lifted my hand, laid my hand on another person. But aggression isn't always physical, is it? We can be very aggressive in attitude and with words. And we can damage and hurt with attitude and words. And sometimes that wound heals a lot slower than a physical one. So to me, pointing out that it's just really personal to me. I've had to make a lot of changes to change who I used to be. But we have to remind people, violence is not always physical. And we want to stay away from being aggressive in any shape, way, or form. What were some of the emotions that Detective North was feeling? And it said he was hurt, he was disgusted, he was definitely frustrated, right? He was being impatient. He was running out of patience with this man. He's asking, we need to know where she is. And he's refusing to say. So, those emotions are understandable. I think all of us, being in that situation, would feel the same way, right? So, again, the emotions themselves have nothing, that's not wrong. It says, how was Detective North disrespectful to the suspect? First, he grabs him by the collar. Like I said, I want you to think of somebody doing that to you, or just watching two people. So this detective, law enforcement officer, as a matter of fact, they're called peace officers. That's their title. Peace officers. Laying his hands, dragging another man out of his chair, and slamming his head. And then people will say, and these are questions that as teachers we need to be prepared to answer. Does someone say, wouldn't you feel like doing something like that if that were your child? And we can say, well, yes, I'm sure I probably would want, I would feel the wanting of me doing that to him or someone doing that to him. But the point is that it's unacceptable. Because no matter what violence is shown towards that man, nothing is going to take away from what he already did, and that in no way brings any healing to his victims, right? So we have to remember that, and we have to be ready to answer those questions when people ask us, because that's truly one of the questions everybody likes to bring up. Wouldn't you feel that way if that were your child? And so we have to be ready to say yes, and the emotion itself is not wrong. It's how he let that emotion control him that became the problem. Did Detective North deserve to be suspended? Okay, here we have, as Peaceful Solution instructors, we have to remember that a lot of the ways that society has to dealing with problems is not the way the Peaceful Solution would suggest it be done, right? Because if suspension was the answer, just like we say, if jails were the answer, to crime, then we would have no crime at this point. We have jail after jail after jail. So if that were the answer, we'd have no criminals anymore, right? So obviously, suspension is not the answer. Detectives, law enforcement officers, they keep doing this. They suspend them, sometimes with pay, sometimes without pay. But, they come back. So what did they learn? Well, all they learned is, you're going to hit somebody, possibly make sure you don't get caught. That's really what they're saying, because there's no training that tells them you lacked self-control, you lacked respect, and the very same thing that you're advocating for those children, you failed to show and demonstrate. And as peaceful solution instructors, one thing we are taught is you lead by example, right? So as a detective, he needs to be that role model of how you treat. You know how many cases have been thrown out of court because of actions like that? He's so disgusted and so frustrated, that man could possibly walk because the case will be thrown out due to what he did. And that's true. Okay? So many court cases get thrown out on technicalities like that. So, you tell people, when you break the rules, there's going to be a consequence. And for this man, the consequence could be that he doesn't get any jail time. He does, nothing occurs to him because of the actions of another person who damaged the case. Simple like that, okay? What consequences do you think Detective North should receive? Well, as peaceful solution instructors, we would say that when these situations arise, we need to have the ability to maintain self-control. And it's work. Like Tori said, we need to remember that we can't think that great things or things worth having are easily attained. Those of us that are older, we know, right? Because she was talking about generations. And for some, things change sometimes, and the younger generation might think, like she says, well, I want great things, but I don't want to have to work for them. That's a mentality very common in the younger people. But we know that hard work is the only way to achieve things that are truly, truly worth having. So we're going to have to practice self-control even when we don't agree with what's taking place. Self-control is the bottom line, right? And when she said respect and self-control, you have to have self-control to practice respect. You have to. Because respect is not just something that you're going to say, well, I respect you. Our actions need to demonstrate that respect for one another. And we need to remember, because what we're training society to truly believe and take in is that violence is never the answer. We can't say, well, violence is okay if it's this group of people doing it. We can't say that, okay? So we have to stand firm in our place that we always believe that violence will never bring about aggression, will never bring forth peace, nor will it bring forth respect to anyone, okay? So it was a joy and pleasure teaching y'all today. Thank you so much for coming to class, and we'll see you next week.